Hey everyone, today I'm looking at Spider-Man 2 across the Steam Deck Ally X and Legion Go. I was hoping to have the Go S as part of this comparison, but it's been lost for a week and hopefully I'll have an update on that soon. Spider-Man 2 definitely hits the handhelds hard and definitely needs a lot more optimization, but there is a standout winner today. Starting off with the Steam Deck OLED, this is really hard to run and we have to really push things down as low as we can without it looking absolutely fuzzy as anything. Unfortunately, that means the low preset with motion blur and film grain off, as well as chromatic aberration off, and in cutscenes it does seem to look okay. It does hold over 30 in a lot of the cutscenes. Very occasionally it gets close, and when we're flying around or swinging around the city, it does regularly dip under that 30 mark, especially around the park areas. It really takes a huge hit around that foliage, but not quite as much as when the Sandman appears. Now, the intro to this game with the Sandman fight is absolutely hideous on the performance, but as you'll see here with the OLED Steam Deck, even on the low preset, as soon as all the little Sandmen appear, the frames per second drops, and not even XeSS on balance can save you from anti-aliasing woes, especially as it's stuck around the mid 20 FPS range. So let's have a look at the ROG Ally X. This does give a GPU warning when you first start up. We're running this at 720p at 120Hz and 25 watts so that we can get the most out of this on battery. Settings wise, we can actually run this at 720p native with no upscaling at all. This is my recommendation with TAA anti-aliasing. Medium graphics preset, but put the anisotropic filtering up to 4 times. Motion blur, film grain and chromatic aberration all off, and you'll see how smooth this can actually look on the Ally X screen. You'll see the same section as we were just watching on the OLED on low. Does dip into the 30s, but most of the time sits around the 40s and 50s, even when those little Sandmen appear. And remember, this is on medium settings, not low. So as those sound people appear, we get around the mid 30s, and as those effects go off, we still stay above 30 FPS. We do start to see some anti-aliasing effects coming in with the particle effects, but this is mostly because it's blown up and you don't really notice them on the Ally X screen. Switching over to the Legion Go, as you see, we also get that GPU error. I've also set this to a custom 25 watt mode so we can match the performance on the ROG Ally X. Of course, you can run both of these at 30 watts, only if you plug in the Ally X though, and put those fans on full or a very aggressive high curve on the Legion Go, otherwise it will shut down pretty quickly. Settings wise, we can't actually get through this one without any anti-aliasing, so 800p with XeSS on ultra quality is as good as we're going to get here, keeping those medium settings to match up with the ROG Ally X, and chromatic, motion blur, etc. off as well. As we're flying through the city, again, we stick over that 30 FPS mark, but it does creep closer and closer to that 30 as we go through around the park, and then once again, when those Sandmen appear, it does take a bit more of a hit than it does on the Ally X, even though we have that anti-aliasing in play as well. I know it's only minor with the ultra quality on XeSS, but it still needs a little bit of help even to try and stay over that 30 mark. As you can see, kicking around here, it is still dipping into the low 20s. This is also with 4 gig of UMA buffer, as if I had it on 8, it crashed every time I ran, and 6 didn't really make any difference. So Legion Go struggling a little bit, even with some XeSS helping it out. If we start to look at frame generation, just a quick side-by-side of the difference between low frame generation and medium Ally X frame generation between the OLED and Ally X here. This is where you really see the difference in quality with the power of the Ally X over the Steam Deck OLED. 25 watts over 15 watts definitely makes a huge difference here, and not to forget the Ally X has an extra 8 gig of RAM at hand as well. So let's have a look at the OLED with frame generation, same settings as we had at the beginning with XeSS on balanced and the low preset. This does actually make it a lot more playable on the Steam Deck, and when we have a lot of fighting and effects going off, although we do still see that anti-aliasing and upscaling hit quite hard, it does actually make it playable. Even with frame generation going on, it will still dip under that 60 and even sometimes down into the low 40s, meaning it's really struggling to hold frame generation solidly, but at least it does make it playable, and with a few patches I think we will be able to play this without frame generation in future. Switching over to the ROG Ally X, if we enable that frame generation, keeping off all of the upscaling, things do really smooth out. It does introduce a very minor amount of input latency, but it is barely noticeable. It really does smooth things out though. It will be a matter of preference whether you want to run this with or without frame generation. It does feel slightly smoother, especially with that variable refresh rate screen with frame generation on, but there really is just a minor difference when playing this on the actual Ally itself, especially at 720p. It really doesn't seem to make a lot of difference. So if you notice, turn it on. If you don't, leave it off. Legion Go frame generation does make it feel a lot better overall, especially with those dips that you saw earlier going into the low 30s. Definitely makes it more playable with the XeSS on ultra quality. Of course, you could put this down to low on the Legion Go to try and get away without having the upscaling, but those medium quality graphics and extra effects that you get really do just make it a much more visual feast for the eyes, and low does make it look a little bit bland. Let us know in the comments below what settings you're running and what your experience has been so far, or whether you're going to be waiting for some patches before you dive into this on the handhelds. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.
They're trying to get inside the ship! They want Scorpion and Lee. We gotta stop them! What do you even want with these guys? Seems like your corp has plenty of members!